In this episode, we dive into a multi-kit project, find the perfect bit out of the bits, check out the prototype scene, as well as get caught up on some of the older projects. And let's not forget the Curmudgeon's Gripe of the Week. All in this episode of SOO The Milwaukee Road. Here's a red caboose 42-foot fish belly flat that we're going to turn into a Tandem MN&S flat car set. This is an ACL car. We're going to strip it, get it cleared up, and get this thing ready to get built. First, you got to look at the details. You got the underframe and some of the other detail parts that go with this particular car. Empty box and instructions.
Don't leave me hanging.
My glue of choice is 10X. I used to use Ambroid, but they no longer make that. And well, there's all kinds of plastic glues out there that you can use. But the point being is you just tag it just lightly in these particular areas to make sure that you've got the floor lined exactly where you want it. Once I do, I end up adding more glue just to adhere it all the way around to make sure that it's good and secure. Speaking of secure, I've got this piece of aluminum with a piece of wet dry sandpaper that I'm going to use to sand off the rivets on these cars. The cars themselves that I'm doing for the prototype are smooth-sided, so this is the process that I use. I add a little bit of water, and I use the aluminum block just to make sure that I get a nice flat surface to ensure that I get a nice smooth finish. One of my favorite things is actually checking out what's new on the old SOO. Here we are in Superior, Wisconsin, checking out a pair of CP GP20C Ecos. These locomotives were rebuilt out of former CP GP9s that had been retired. The internal guts, the prime mover, all that good stuff were former GP9s. And the exterior obviously looks like something newer that's more modern. And what's less modern are these 1978 built 4750 cubic foot, 60-foot hoppers.
Did you follow all that?
And to save on time, we'll get past some of these gondolas that are graffiti riddled. But I did notice this gem. A CP car with SOO markings that never wore SOO paint. More cons than this.
Hallelujah, 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 holy SOO light.
Don't quit your day job. A pair of ACFs. The first one was built in 1981 and this one here in 1975. And that concludes what's new on the SOO. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing a little prototype action. Alright, who of you know the SOO? Do you know who the builder of this SOO covered hopper is? Is it A, Pullman Standard, B, Transco, C, Magor, or is it D, FMC? We'll find out later in this episode. Alright, what we're going to do here is remove the push-pull pockets, and those are those little indentations on the end of the car. They used to use a push-pull to nudge cars out of the way, and well, that wasn't the safest thing to do. Neither is using the razor blade like we are here, but what we're going to do is actually just shave the pockets off using a sharp razor blade and just lightly working it underneath the pocket, and before you know it, we'll get this thing removed. Alright, and there we have it. Needs to be cleaned up just a little bit more, but you get the idea. Alright, we've got the underframe here. We're looking at screw mounting the coupler plate. These things are normally press fit, and it's not an ideal application, so you drill out the hole in preparation to tap in a 256 screw. I cut the little tiny nubbin off of the actual plate.
What's a nubbin?
And I'm drilling the plate out to tap it out as well. As I get this prepared, I end up using a 256 tap, and this tap will obviously tap 256 screws. So they'll be able to screw in nicely, and the coupler plate won't fall off. Once we've got that drilled and tapped, we want to look at coupler pocket management. Notice the little bit of flash that's on the edge of the coupler pocket? You got to clean that up. I use whisker couplers, and that whisker will catch that little bit of flash, and as you can see here, it's going to cause issues. You want to make sure that you use like an X-Acto blade or something of that nature to be able to flush that up and make sure that the coupler is working in the best way possible. Well, now that we've got the coupler working well, we end up turning our attention to the wheels. These are the plastic AccuRail wheels. They are junk. I get rid of these because I end up moving on to some intermountain metal wheels, which I end up painting the sides of the wheels as well as the back and popping it into the frame, and end up turning out quite nice.
Ooh, here's a 10-second tip.
Save your paint! And the way I save my paint is just wiping the rim as well as the lid to ensure that the paint doesn't build up. If it builds up, it dries out, it's no good. I needed to cut a groove in the top deck of the dual flats, and I ended up having to come across this particular little router bit.
Where'd you get that?
And it's out of this box of Bush bits.
Nice bits.
As you can see here, there's a whole lot to select from, and I ended up picking one that was about 1/32 of an inch. And I ended up chucking it into my Dremel tool that is chucked into this Dremel table, which I use the paint stick as a fence.
Hold on to your butts.
Oh, this is a groovy groove, baby. Yeah, listen to that groove while you groove.
And there you have it. That's the grooved out flat car that I've got the whole set done, and I'm going to work on the process of just getting the cars put together and going through and adding a little bit more of the details like the side pockets. I'm not going to pain you with clipping all these things off and watching them all be installed one by one, because that would be about as exciting as chewing on a rail spike. All right, let's test some of that useless information you got stored up in that noodle. Do you know who built this car? Did you guess B, Transco? Though commonly mistaken for the Magor-produced cars on the SOO roster, the Transco cars boast the first SOO hoppers to receive the brake wheel in the lower position. All right, we're going to do a real quick run-by and take a look at what projects are in progress that need primer.
Project in progress needing primer.
Starting out here is the SD10. That is the Lions West cab that we've been, well, seems like I've been working on forever, but it's finding its way to the finish line. The windows have been clear-coated. All right, I just want to jump over to the workbench real quick and show you what I mean by clear-coated. These are the resin-printed windows. As you can see, they're foggy, and there is a way to be able to clear them up. A fairly simple solution. I end up grabbing a steel block. The use of flexi-grit sandpaper, which Dustin, a fellow modeler, pointed out to me, this stuff is great. You can see it comes in a lot of different grades. I end up using the steel block to be able to have a nice flat surface, to be able to sand these windows and give you that really nice flat glass-like finish. All right, and there we have it, a nice flat, smooth surface that's ready to get clear-coated. You can use a number of different clear coat products. In this case, I'm using Zinolite.
Zinolite.
This is just a clear coat that my grandpa had on hand, and this ends up working really well. As you can see, the end result turns out nice, and you got yourself some clear windows. So let's return back to the projects that need primer. The number boards have been added. The light has been added to the top of the cab, as well as the horsed air filter and the pair of Detail Associates exhaust stacks. All right, and this next project that's pleading for primer is this 40-foot red caboose fish belly flat. It will become MN&S number 711. It was part of a tandem set, Part A and Part B of number 710, but the SOO line split them up and created 710 and 711. This next set here is a tandem set, which will become 710, as well as another set, 712, and I'm going to do 714. These cars generally hauled culverts or implement equipment. It's kind of cool to be able to have a unique flat car like this rolling around the rails. Some of these I will probably part with at some point. But before I do, I'm going to haul this here USPS Jeep. And no, it's not the one we've already seen. This is the next one. I do have 3 of these that I'm going to complete, that being one of them. Originally, the idea was to create an auto rack filled with these Jeeps, but, well, that was just too timely and too costly, so we've moved on. And speaking of moving on, we've moved on to the garbage truck. The garbage truck itself is that Matchbox one we've been working on. It has received its primer. It just needs its paint, a little bit of detail, and its decals. And then we'll try to find its way to the finish line. And here we have that 50-foot Cannon & Company boxcar. It's got a little bit of work yet. I need to put the interior gussets that will stabilize the sidewalls and kind of get this thing tied together. Just needs a few stirrups and a few grab irons, and it's going to find itself into primer. Now we're looking at here are the scale cars. Scale cars themselves, I'm going to do a BN as well as a Arkwood and Rice Creek. Those will just be a couple of elements that I can roll around the railroad, and they too, of course, are finding their way to primer.
Bringing up the rear.
We've got a couple crummies and hacks. So looking at here, a Lions West thrall caboose. I've added the grab irons, but the roof walk and a few other details are yet to be added, but soon primer is coming up. And last but not least, but at least it's the last, is the Walthers Wide Vision caboose. It just needs some grabs, then we'll throw the primer on, the remaining paint and decals, and it should be done just like the end of this clip.
Here comes the Curmudgeon coming at you for the grab of the week. And this week it's rail sides and wheel sides. There's no sense in leaving them all blingy. You don't need your big 33s and your big 36s all polished and chromed out. That ain't the real deal. Put a little paint on them things. Same with the side rails. You don't want to leave them all shiny. It looks like a diamond commercial when you're watching them things rolling the rails. This is just a suggestion from the Curmudgeon's grab of the week. Put a little paint on them things.
Be sure and hit the like button. You can click here to subscribe. You can also check out other episodes of SOO The Milwaukee Road, as well as take the tour of the GN in 1970.